I have nothing left to say.
4 years ago, I married Jessica Sterling. Her dad, Robert, owned Sterling Tech Systems, a software company that was doing decent business in the cybersecurity space. When we got engaged, Robert offered me a job. Sounds nice, right? Except he offered me an entry-level IT support position. I had a master's in computer science and had worked at 2 other tech companies before, but Robert made it clear that working for him meant starting from the bottom. Work your way up, earn your stripes, he told me at our engagement dinner, clapping my back hard enough to hurt. What he really meant was, know your place and be grateful I'm letting you marry my daughter. So I took the job. What else was I going to do? I was in love with Jessica, and I figured I could prove myself over time. That was my first mistake, thinking that performance mattered in a place where your last name determined your ceiling. I spent 3 years in that IT support role. My days consisted of resetting passwords for people who wrote them on sticky notes, fixing printers that somehow always jammed during important meetings, and explaining to senior executives that turning it off and on again wasn't an insult to their intelligence. Robert loved introducing me at company events as his son-in-law who works in IT support. He'd say it with this tone that made it clear I was several rungs below everyone else in the room. Jessica would laugh along. At one company dinner, she told a story about how I fixed her phone after she dropped it in her mimosa at brunch. Everyone thought it was hilarious. I smiled and pretended it didn't bother me. That's what you do when you're trying to fit into a family that treats you like the help. The funny part is that Robert's own cybersecurity was a joke. His password was literally Sterling 123. I'm not exaggerating. The CEO of a tech company, a company that sold security solutions to other businesses, protected his admin account with a password you could guess in 3 tries. And he locked himself out constantly. At least once a week, his assistant would call me to his office so I could reset it while he watched like I was performing brain surgery. But here's what Robert and Jessica never knew about those 3 years. While I was fixing printers during the day, I was writing code at night. Real code. Revolutionary code. I started working on my own cybersecurity platform during my 2nd year at Sterling Tech. I get home around 6, eat dinner while Jessica filmed content for her Instagram, then go into our spare bedroom and code until midnight. I built an intrusion detection system that used pattern recognition to identify threats before they fully materialized. The algorithms could predict attack vectors based on preliminary network behavior. I called it Secure Shield Technologies. I was careful about everything. I registered the business under a shell company using my mother's maiden name, Morgan. All the patents were filed under that name. The intellectual property was mine, completely separate from Sterling Tech. I even used a different bank for all the accounts. When the patents got approved about 18 months into development, I was sitting at my desk at Sterling Tech, fixing a printer jam for Tracy in HR. I got the congratulations email from the U.S. Patent Office on my phone, while my hands were covered in toner. Around that same time, Sterling Tech's R&D department was trying to build their own next-generation security platform. Robert had invested about $2 million into it. The project failed spectacularly after 8 months. Their system couldn't handle real-world stress tests and the code was inefficient. Robert was furious about the waste. That's when I made my move. I approached Robert through a third-party vendor who pitched Secure Shield as a new acquisition opportunity. Anonymous founder, cutting-edge technology, available for purchase at a reasonable price. Robert jumped at it. He thought he was getting a steal. I'll never forget the day the acquisition closed. Robert walked around the office like he'd just won the lottery. He stopped by my cubicle and told me they'd just acquired some genius's cybersecurity platform. The founder's anonymous, he said, grinning. Some brilliant person who apparently doesn't understand business valuation. Sold us a gold mine for pocket change. They'll probably regret it when they realize what they gave away. I nodded along. Wow, that's a great deal, sir. He patted my shoulder. Maybe someday you'll understand this level of business strategy. I smiled and went back to my computer. What Robert didn't understand was contract law. He'd bought a license to use Secure Shield, not ownership of it. The controlling intellectual property remained with Morgan Solutions, LLC, which was my shell company. Every renewal, every update, every maintenance requirement went through systems I controlled. They thought they owned it. They were really just renting it from me on terms I'd written. Over the next year, Secure Shield became the backbone of Sterling Tech's entire operation. Every client contract depended on it. Every security protocol ran through it. Every database protection system was built on top of it. Robert bragged about it constantly. He'd tell clients that Sterling Tech had acquired revolutionary technology that made them the most secure option in the market. Meanwhile, I kept showing up to work every day, fixing computers and smiling through condescending comments. At board dinners, Robert would make jokes about his son-in-law, the IT guy. Once he said, "Marcus here is great with computers. He's basically my personal tech support." Everyone laughed. Jessica added, "Yeah, he even fixes my laptop when I get too many pop-ups from shopping sites." More laughter. I'd smile and nod and mentally file away every humiliation for future reference. Because that's the thing about underestimating people. It gives them time to prepare. Then came the evaluation meeting 3 months ago. I got an email from HR asking me to attend a performance review. Nothing unusual about that. They happened annually. I showed up 15 minutes early because I'm always punctual. The conference room was set up differently than normal reviews, though. Robert sat at the head of the table with Tracy from HR on his right and 2 board members I barely knew on his left. I took my usual seat in the middle and waited. Robert didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Marcus, we've reviewed your department's performance," he started, shuffling papers that were probably just for show. "Unfortunately, the results aren't meeting our expectations. We've decided to let you go due to performance issues, effective immediately." I sat there for a second processing this. My team had prevented 3 major security breaches in the past year. We'd optimized their systems and increased efficiency by over 40%. Our department had the highest client satisfaction ratings in the company. But sure, performance issues? Tracy slid an envelope across the table. Inside was my termination letter with my full name typed at the top like a court document. "Security will escort you out after you clear your desk," Robert added. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just took the envelope, stood up, and buttoned my jacket. As I walked to the door, I caught Robert's reflection in the glass wall. He had this satisfied smirk on his face, like he just won something. I dropped my security badge at the front desk and walked out. The whole drive home, I felt this strange calm, like I'd been waiting for something to break, and it finally had. When I got home around 11 in the morning, Jessica was at the kitchen counter in silk pajamas that cost more than my first car, drinking wine and scrolling through her phone. She barely glanced up when I walked in. "You're home early," she said in this flat tone. "Yeah, I got fired." Performance issues, apparently. I expected surprise, maybe anger, maybe even sympathy. Instead, her face lit up like I'd just told her we won the lottery. She reached into her designer bag, the one she'd bought with my credit card, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. When I unfolded it, I found a printed list of homeless shelters in the area. Each one was highlighted in pink. One had a star next to it with a note. "This one has free Wi-Fi." She looked at me with this cold smile and said, "Now that you're jobless, I don't need you anymore. Dad told me last week this was probably coming, so I had time to prepare some options for you." I just stared at her. This woman I'd been married to for 4 years had known for a week that her father was going to fire me, and she'd spent that time researching homeless shelters, not job opportunities, not ways to help, but literal places I could go be homeless. She kept talking. "My friends are all moving forward in life, getting brand deals, marrying men with actual careers, and here I am stuck with a tech support guy who can't even keep a job at my dad's company." I realized in that moment that I'd never really known her, or maybe I'd known and just refused to see it. "So you're not even going to try to work this out?" I asked. She laughed. "Work what out? You're unemployed. What exactly do you bring to this relationship now?" I went upstairs, packed a duffel bag with essentials, and came back down. Jessica followed me to the door, still laughing, asking where I thought I was going with no job and no money. She seemed genuinely entertained by the whole situation. "I'm going to find some peace," I told her. "You should try it sometime." "You'll come crawling back," she called after me as I walked to my car. "You have nowhere to go." I didn't respond. I just left. Here's what neither Robert nor Jessica knew. I wasn't some broke IT support guy. I had more money than either of them realized. The Secure Shield acquisition had paid out nicely to my shell company. Plus, I'd been saving aggressively for 3 years because I never trusted that this family had my best interests at heart. I had about $200K in savings and another $400K in accounts tied to Secure Shield. I drove to an apartment complex across town and paid for 6 months up front in cash. It wasn't fancy, just a simple 1-bedroom with basic furniture and walls that had definitely seen better days. But it was mine, and that mattered more than marble countertops ever would. I spent the first few days just existing. I'd wake up, make coffee, and sit by the window watching the city move below me. It felt like I was in a movie about someone else's life. My phone buzzed constantly with automated emails from Sterling Tech's HR about exit procedures and equipment returns. I ignored all of it. On day 4, I called my old friend Danny. We'd been friends since college, and he was one of maybe 3 people who knew about Secure Shield. "They actually fired you?" he said when I told him everything. "After all the work you did for them?" "Yep." And Jessica handed me a list of homeless shelters as a parting gift. Danny was quiet for a moment. "So what's the plan? Please tell me you have a plan." "I'm going to let them destroy themselves," I said. "The Secure Shield license renewal is coming up in a week." "And you're not renewing it?" "Nope." "Oh man," Danny laughed. "They have no idea what's coming." Before I did anything else, I checked the joint credit cards Jessica and I shared. She'd used one that morning for a $300 charge at some boutique. I froze all of them. Every card, every account we shared. She'd find out soon enough. Then I spent the next few days going through old files I'd kept from my time at Sterling Tech. I still had admin access to a lot of their systems because Robert had given it to me years ago and never revoked it. That was his second massive mistake after firing me. While reviewing financial records, I found something interesting. Sterling Tech had been making quarterly payments to a company called Sterling Creative Solutions, LLC, for the past 2 years. The amounts added up to about $1.2 million. There were no contracts on file, no invoices, no documentation of any actual work being done. I did some digging. Sterling Creative Solutions was registered to Jessica Sterling. My wife had been receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from her father's company with no legitimate business justification. It was basically Robert funneling company money to his daughter and disguising it as business expenses. I documented everything. Bank transfers, dates, amounts, the complete lack of contracts or work product. It was textbook fraud. On day 7, the day Sterling Tech's Secure Shield license was set to auto-renew, I logged into my shell company's licensing portal and clicked Decline Renewal. That was it. One click. Within 4 hours, Sterling Tech's security systems started showing error messages. Their firewall protocols began failing. Client access portals started glitching. By evening, their IT department was in full panic mode trying to figure out what was wrong. I made myself dinner and watched the chaos unfold through monitoring systems I still had access to. Error logs flooding in, emergency meetings being called, consultants being contacted. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Day 2, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers. Numbers from Sterling Tech's main line, Robert's office extension. I didn't answer any of them. Around noon, Robert's executive assistant left a voicemail. "Mr. Anderson, this is Sarah from Mr. Sterling's office. We're experiencing some technical difficulties with our systems and wondered if you might have time to consult on the issue. If you could return this call at your earliest convenience, we'd really appreciate it." I waited an hour, then called back. Sarah answered on the first ring. "Oh, thank God," she said. "Mr. Anderson, we really need your help. The entire security system is malfunctioning, and our IT team can't figure out why." "Have them submit a support ticket through the employee portal," I said cheerfully. "The employee portal isn't working either," she said, sounding close to tears. "That is unfortunate," I replied. "Good luck with that." I hung up. Day 3, I went grocery shopping like a normal person. In the cereal aisle, I ran into Tyler, one of the younger developers from Sterling Tech. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was a mess, and he was wearing the same shirt I'd seen him in 2 days earlier. "Marcus," he said, grabbing a shopping cart for support. "Man, it's absolute chaos at the office. Everything's failing. The backup systems aren't working, client data is inaccessible, and Robert's having a complete meltdown. They're talking about bringing in consultants from 3 different firms." I picked up a box of cereal. "That sounds stressful. Hope they figure it out." "You always said they didn't invest enough in infrastructure redundancy," Tyler said. "Guess you were right." "Yeah," I said, putting the cereal in my basket. "Guess so." Day 5, the news picked it up. I was having coffee when I saw the headline on my phone. Sterling Tech Systems experiencing major outages. Stock falls 11%. The article mentioned that clients were reporting widespread access issues and that the company had declined to comment on the cause. I had 164 missed calls by that point. Robert had called at least 40 times. Jessica had called 15 times, probably because the credit cards weren't working. Various board members and executives had called from numbers I didn't recognize. That afternoon, I decided to send a professional email to Robert's assistant, Sarah. I kept it polite and formal. Dear Miss Patterson, I appreciate your continued outreach regarding the current system instability at Sterling Tech. Unfortunately, I'm unavailable for consulting at this time due to other commitments. However, I'd be happy to refer you to several capable IT consulting firms once my schedule allows. Warm regards, Marcus Anderson, founder, Secure Shield Technologies. I signed it with my real company name. Figured it was time to let them start connecting the dots. Day 7, Robert called from what I assumed was his personal cell phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Marcus, he said, and his voice was completely different from the confident CEO tone I was used to. He sounded exhausted, desperate even. We need to talk. This firing was a mistake. I can see that now. These system failures we're experiencing, they're not normal technical issues. I know you had administrative access to our systems. Maybe there's something you can help us fix. I let the silence hang for a few seconds. I could potentially help, I said slowly, but that would require revisiting my employment terms, my compensation structure, and frankly, the basic respect that was lacking, all of which were terminated without cause. He exhaled hard like he'd been holding his breath. Marcus, please, name your price, whatever you want. I appreciate the offer, I said. I'll need some time to think about it. How much time? I'll be in touch, I said, and hung up. I didn't call back. Instead, I took all the documentation I'd compiled about the fraudulent payments to Jessica's company and sent it anonymously to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I included bank records, transfer dates, the complete lack of legitimate contracts, and a few other accounting irregularities I'd noticed over the years. Things like expense reports that didn't match receipts, vendor payments that seemed inflated, stuff that hadn't seemed worth reporting when I worked there, but now painted a picture of systematic financial misconduct. The SEC works faster than people think when they get solid evidence. Within 2 weeks, the investigation went public. Meanwhile, Sterling Tech's situation kept getting worse. Their website crashed, their social media accounts posted vague corporate apologies that satisfied no one. Their stock continued falling. Tech news sites started running articles with headlines like, "What's really happening at Sterling Tech?" and "Security firm's mysterious technical crisis continues." One evening, Danny came over with pizza and beer. We sat on my balcony watching the city lights. "You know this is insane, right?" he said. "You're basically a ghost haunting your ex-boss's company from across town." "I prefer to think of it as delayed accountability," I said, taking a sip of beer. "Robert's probably losing his mind trying to figure out what happened." "Good," I said. "He spent 3 years making me feel incompetent. Now he gets to actually experience incompetence in real time." "You're cold, man. I respect it, but you're cold." "Not cold," I corrected. "Just done being warm to people who treated me like garbage." 3 weeks after my termination, I received a formal email from Sterling Tech's board of directors. The subject line read, "Request for meeting, urgent business matter." The email was carefully worded, almost pleading. They wanted to meet to discuss terms for resolving their ongoing technical difficulties and to explore potential consulting arrangements. It was signed by all 4 board members. I replied professionally, "I'm available Thursday at 2 p.m. Thursday came and I put on my best suit, the navy one I'd bought for my wedding. I drove to Sterling Tech's office building for the first time since being fired. Walking through those glass doors felt surreal. The receptionist, Angela, did a visible double take when she saw me. "Mr. Anderson," she said, almost stuttering, "I'll notify the executive team right away that you're here." Within 3 minutes, Sarah appeared to escort me upstairs. She looked frazzled, like she'd been dealing with crisis after crisis. In the elevator, she kept checking her phone nervously. "They're all in the main conference room," she said. "Everyone's very eager to speak with you." The conference room was packed. Robert sat near the middle of the table this time, not at the head where he usually held court. Tracy from HR was there with her notepad. 4 board members filled other seats. Everyone looked tired and stressed. When I walked in, Robert's face went pale. I took the seat at the head of the table, the power position Robert usually occupied. He opened his mouth to object, but thought better of it. "That's typically where I sit," he said weakly. "I know," I replied, setting my briefcase on the table. "Not today, though." I opened my briefcase and pulled out 3 folders, each labeled and organized. One contained the complete Secure Shield licensing agreement with all the fine print highlighted. Another held financial records of the payments to Jessica's company. The third had documentation of other financial irregularities. Before we discuss solutions, I started, let's establish some facts. Approximately 70% of Sterling Tech's operational infrastructure runs on software owned by Secure Shield Technologies. That's my company, which I founded and registered 3 years ago under a shell company name. You purchased a renewable license for software access, not ownership of the intellectual property. That license expired 3 weeks ago. Every major client contract you have that depends on Secure Shield's security protocols is currently in breach of terms. Tracy's pen stopped moving mid-sentence. Richard, one of the board members who'd actually been decent to me over the years, leaned forward. You're telling us the company doesn't own its primary security framework? He asked carefully. Correct. You paid a one-time acquisition fee for a renewable license with specific terms that apparently nobody read thoroughly. Robert's face flushed red. You deliberately deceived us. You knew we thought we were buying the whole system. I did exactly what I was hired to do, I said calmly. I built and maintained your security infrastructure. What you assumed about ownership isn't my responsibility. You're the CEO, Robert. Reading contracts before signing them is literally your job. I slid the second folder across the polished table toward Richard. While we're discussing accountability, here's something interesting. Sterling Tech has transferred approximately $1.2 million to Sterling Creative Solutions, LLC over the past 2.5 years. That company is registered to Jessica Sterling. There are no contracts on file, no invoices, no deliverables, no documented work of any kind. Just regular wire transfers from corporate accounts to your daughter's personal business. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. That's impossible, Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's documented here with bank transfer records, dates, and amounts, I said. Tracy, I believe this violates about 7 different corporate ethics policies, doesn't it? Tracy looked at the documents, her face pale. Yes, it does. This would constitute misappropriation of corporate funds and nepotistic financial misconduct. I'm aware, I said. So is the Securities and Exchange Commission. They received an anonymous tip about 2 weeks ago. Robert looked like someone had physically struck him. You reported this to the SEC? Someone reported financial irregularities to the appropriate federal authorities, I said. They'll determine culpability through their investigation. Another board member, a woman named Patricia, who I'd barely interacted with, spoke up. Mr. Anderson, what exactly are you proposing here? I looked around the room slowly, making eye contact with each person. I'm proposing that Sterling Tech start operating with actual integrity instead of just using it as a marketing buzzword. That means Robert Sterling needs to be suspended immediately pending the federal investigation into financial misconduct. It also means this company needs to acknowledge that its success has been built on technology it doesn't own and can't operate without cooperation from the actual owner. Richard examined the licensing agreement I'd provided, comparing it against notes on his tablet. According to our corporate bylaws, any party controlling more than 10% of the company's core intellectual property has standing to call for an emergency board review in cases of compromised leadership. He's correct on the legal standing. We need to vote on the suspension. This is absurd, Robert said, but there was no power in his voice anymore. You can't seriously be considering taking his word over mine. It's not about taking anyone's word, Richard replied. It's about documented evidence and legal obligations. The licensing agreement is clear. The financial transfers are documented. And frankly, Robert, we're facing a potential federal investigation. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to act. The vote took about 10 minutes of discussion. One by one, the board members cast their votes. 5 voted in favor of immediate suspension pending investigation. 1 abstained. Robert voted against it. But by then, it didn't matter. When the vote concluded, Robert just sat there staring at the table like he couldn't process what had happened. The man who'd spent 3 years making me feel small now looked like he'd shrunk in his chair. You think you've won something here? He said quietly. You think destroying me makes you powerful? I stood up and started gathering my documents. I don't think I've won anything, Robert. I think I've corrected a power imbalance. You made me feel worthless for 3 years while profiting from my work. Now you're experiencing what it feels like to have someone else control your success. If that feels like destruction to you, maybe consider how I felt every time you introduced me as just the IT guy. I walked to the door. Robert called after me one more time. If you leave now, you'll regret this. I turned back. I already have regrets, Robert. Staying as long as I did is at the top of that list. That's why I'm not staying anymore. I walked out. In the hallway, I literally ran into Jessica. She must have been waiting, or maybe security had called her. She looked perfect as always, styled hair, designer outfit, phone in hand, like an extension of her arm. "What did you do to my father?" she demanded, stepping into my path. "I provided the board with documentation of financial misconduct," I said calmly. "What happens next is up to federal investigators. You're destroying our family." "No, Jessica. Your father destroyed any moral authority he had by committing fraud. I just made sure the right people found out about it." Her eyes narrowed in that way they did when she wasn't getting what she wanted. "You're not going to get away with this." I almost laughed. "You said the exact same thing on our wedding day when I made that joke about you being stuck with me forever. Funny how that turned out." She flinched like I'd slapped her. I walked past her to the elevator, rode down alone, and left the building. The afternoon sun hit me like a wave of heat and possibility. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could actually breathe. The news cycle picked everything up fast. Within a week, headlines were everywhere. Sterling Tech CEO suspended amid federal fraud investigation, and security company's leadership crisis deepens. The stock dropped another 15%. Federal auditors descended on the company and found everything: all the irregular payments, falsified expense reports, shell company transfers, everything Robert had been hiding. Jessica's influencer career imploded overnight. Her sponsors dropped her within 48 hours of the news breaking. Her Instagram followers, the same people who'd commented heart emojis on her posts for years, turned brutal in the comments section. She went from posting daily content to complete radio silence within a week. Her last post before going dark was a quote about growth and transformation over a sunset photo. The top comment said, "Maybe try growing some ethics." Meanwhile, I relaunched Secure Shield Technologies under my own name with complete transparency. No more shell companies, no hidden ownership structures, just me building something legitimate and ethical. Within a month, I hired 6 former Sterling Tech employees. Good people, talented developers who'd been underpaid and undervalued under Robert's management. We set up a small office, nothing fancy, just a workspace where people felt respected. We landed a government cybersecurity contract within 3 months, something that would have taken years to achieve with Sterling Tech's damaged reputation. I also reconnected with an old colleague named Emily, who'd left Sterling Tech 2 years earlier because she couldn't stand Robert's management style. She'd gone into consulting and was brilliant at operations. I offered her a COO position at Secure Shield, and she accepted immediately. "Finally working somewhere that doesn't make me want to fake my own passing," she joked on her first day. 4 months after everything collapsed, I was reviewing scholarship applications for a program I'd started called the Morgan Initiative, named after my mother. It funded coding education for kids from low-income backgrounds. While reading through applications, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. The number was Jessica's. I almost deleted it without listening, but curiosity won. I hit play. "Marcus, it's me." Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow, without the confident edge it usually had. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me. You definitely shouldn't have to. I just needed to say something. You never yelled at me. You never fought back or made scenes. You just quietly left. That silence has been worse than any argument we ever had. I've had a lot of time to think. And I realize now that you weren't leaving to hurt me. You were leaving because you finally respected yourself more than I ever did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand why you left." The voicemail ended. I sat there staring at my phone for a long moment. I played it again, listening for any hint of manipulation or ulterior motive. But it just sounded like someone who'd finally realized the cost of their choices. I archived the voicemail. Not deleted, just archived. Some things you keep as milestones, markers of how far you've come. 6 months after the initial explosion, life had found a rhythm. Secure Shield Technologies was growing steadily. We'd opened a second office and hired 20 more people. The Morgan Initiative had 40 students enrolled and had already placed 3 graduates in internships at major tech firms. Robert took a plea deal with the SEC. He paid substantial fines and was permanently barred from serving as an executive officer at any publicly traded company. Sterling Tech was eventually sold to a larger corporation that had better management practices. The new owners, ironically, kept the Secure Shield licensing agreement because the software was so deeply integrated into their operations that replacing it would have cost millions. Every month, I get an automated payment notification. Sterling Tech Systems, now under completely different ownership and management, pays their quarterly licensing fee for Secure Shield access. I don't know if Robert ever sees those expense reports anymore, but somewhere in some database, there's a line item that says Secure Shield Technologies, license renewal, with my company's name on it. That's not revenge. That's just business. Really good, profitable business. Jessica moved to Colorado and apparently teaches yoga now. I heard through mutual acquaintances that her studio focuses on mindfulness and rebuilding after failure. I hope she actually finds whatever she's looking for. I don't wish her damage, but I don't wish her success either. I just wish her gone from my thoughts, which mostly she is. As for me, I wake up every morning excited about the work I'm doing. I'm building something I'm genuinely proud of with people I respect. No more swallowing insults or pretending to be less capable than I am. No more family dinners where I'm the punchline. Last week, a kid from the Morgan Initiative named Devin sent me a message. He'd just gotten hired at a major tech firm right out of our program. Mr. Anderson, thank you for believing in me when nobody else did. One day I'm going to build something that changes everything. I wrote back, "You already are, Devin. Keep going." That message meant more to me than any revenge ever could. Because that's the thing I learned through all of this. The best way to get back at people who tried to make you feel small isn't to make them feel small in return. It's to build something so meaningful that their opinions become irrelevant. Danny still jokes that I'm the coldest person he knows because I never gloated, never confronted them publicly, never posted about it on social media. I tell him I'm not cold, just focused. There's a difference between revenge and reconstruction. Revenge is about the past. Reconstruction is about the future. People ask if I'm happy now, and the honest answer is yes. Not because Robert lost his company, or because Jessica lost her influencer status, or because I have money. I'm happy because I finally stopped letting other people write my story. The best revenge isn't loud. It's not about making sure everyone sees you win. It's about building something so substantial that when people finally realize what happened, you're already too far ahead for them to catch up. It's about living well, not in spite of what they did, but because of what you built from the wreckage. So yeah, my father-in-law fired me for performance issues and my wife handed me a list of homeless shelters. They thought they'd destroyed me and left me with nothing. Instead, they freed me to become exactly who I was supposed to be. They removed every excuse I had for not taking risks. They burned down the life I was settling for and forced me to build the life I actually wanted. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. You just can't see it until you're standing on the other side, looking back at where you used to be. I'm on the other side now. And from here, the view is absolutely incredible.